August 7th, 1909. Alice Ramsley and 3 friends become the first women to complete a transcontinental auto trip, taking 59 days to travel from New York, New York to San Francisco, California. The trip was spurred by a wild bet to lose their virginity before going to college in the fall, and often hilariously diverted by their larger-than-life friend, Hoagie.
Welcome to The Revisionists. I'm Brian Flynn.
I'm Zach Powers.
And join us, we're very excited to have Gina Radcliffe's counterpart from Kill by Kill. Please welcome Patrick Hamilton, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, you guys might
you.
remember Gina from, I believe it was our Spring-Heeled Jack episode last Halloween?
Yeah, it was one of the Halloween episodes.
I think it was Spring-Heeled Jack. She made a Willy Wonka-esque version of Spring-Heeled Jack, who like invented Slinkies or something of that nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sure. That sounds like Gina. Yeah. I'm down with that. Yeah.
Sorry, right before we started recording, like the sun started absolutely pouring through the fucking fake skylight in our apartment.
It looks like you're having a revelation. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I'm about to be raptured, which I did not bet on at all.
Yeah.
You're pulling a Saint Maud on us. And I'm all for
I hope Jen and the baby are going to be okay without you, because it's time to go.
They'll be fine. Can't believe the baby did not get raptured, but she knows what
God
she did.
has fucked up rules about babies. When are you going to get that baptism, Brian?
I have accidentally spilled, I think, iced tea on her, so that counts, sort of counts in our... Yeah.
They're very washable. It's fine. Babies can take a lot. Like,
that was one of the things that sold us on her. Just had very washable.
I remember at the Last Supper,
highly reusable.
It was what? The bread and the Lipton were the 2 things that he served? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and of course, if the baby is Jewish, you say that's bris, baby.
Yeah. Obviously, in the ICP faction, it was the bread and the Faygo, but, you know.
Yep. Yeah, of course.
Family for life.
Zach, what do we usually do on this show?
This is a comedy history podcast in which we discuss a person or event from history. One of the people on the show gives a government-sanctioned sort of Wikipedia-allowed version of that person or event. And another person then gives perhaps an alternate version that can be as batshit bananas as they want it to. As is our new constant reminder, we came up with this slogan before the Trump era when alternate histories were a lot more fun. We do not sanction QAnon in any way. But at the end of the episode, we vote on what becomes the true history of this iridescent, beautiful, spinning, spherical marvel we call the Earth going forward. And that's the basic gist of the podcast.
Now, do you have a trademark on Earth, or is that something that anyone can pick up? Like, because if you're calling it Earth, like, what are other people calling it?
Technically, I don't always say this. The revisionist world is Earth 146.
Okay.
Marvel does actually acknowledge us as a legitimate Earth. I think we're getting a Disney Plus series that's still in talks.
Okay. That's what anyone wants.
You know, Faggy, if he'll get back to me. I've sent him a lot of emails, so...
There's so many pictures of Kevin Feige just lining the walls of your room with red string.
Yeah, I guess
going between them.
Loki alternate timelines
All of them are
fine,
made into hearts.
But when 2 random podcasters want their own alternate timeline show, that's not profitable. I don't understand. I'm trying.
They said something about neither of us have any experience or the face to be in on television. Zach has a TV face. I could see Zach on TV.
It's very kind, but maybe 5
You
years
are
ago.
symmetrical. Give yourself that.
Thank you.
You know, soak that in.
Yeah. I've got that nice symmetry.
Yeah.
Regardless, we are in the middle of our series on spies. Yeah. Last time we discussed Lionel Crab, but listener, for us, we recorded that 2 days ago, so we fully don't have the results of that episode back yet.
No fucking idea.
Yeah. For a refresher, Lionel Crab in real life disappeared on a reconnaissance mission. I provided an alternate history that was a James Bond adventure that ended with the lyrics to Rock Lobster. So we are waiting.
It sounds absurd when you say it like that.
Yeah. He discovered the Medusa serum.
Whereas in the moment, it feels true.
Yeah, exactly. That's the magic of the show.
Sure.
Where 20 minutes later you think back like, wait, what the fuck was that?
So we'll get back to you next episode with more results. We don't have anything new since last we recorded 2 days ago. But I believe this episode we're going to be covering Operation Fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a pre-D-Day adventure, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that was the subtitle.
That would be the choose your own adventure subtitle. Yes.
And of course, Saving Private Ryan, a post-D-Day adventure.
Yeah, yeah. It was weird when Choose Your Own Adventures in the 70s made books about both of those, where for some reason a 14-year-old kid got wrapped up in the action.
Listen, that dog really came through in the clutch, and that's the important part.
Yeah. I mean, thank God you picked up the ham sandwich on page 14. Otherwise, you would have gotten the bad ending.
You would have been screwed. And let's be honest.
That's why you save your place.
I believe Patrick has the real versions of events this time.
Yes, I do.
So, without further ado, Patrick, would you like to elucidate us on Operation Fortitude?
Yeah, cast your mind back. These are the black and white days of the Eastern Front, or the Western Front of Europe, I suppose. And why I chose the real thing is that finally I could tell my dad I did something on a podcast he might be interested in listening to.
You can tell every dad that, I think.
It's basically your dad's, my dad.
Some real life World
dad.
War II history. The History Channel of circa 15 years ago. That's Dad's thing.
Yeah.
Where
Yeah,
now it's
very
just
much
aliens and Pawn Stars, I think.
Ice Road Truckers or something.
Yeah, something. Oh, well, there's lots of truckers involved. So I knew like some of this literally from like, being forced to watch the History Channel in our one television in our house. So I knew the Fortitude South stuff. What I didn't really know was the Fortitude North. But what all this comes down to is Operation Fortitude was warfare by catfishing.
So it is kind of a History Channel. It's appropriate to History Channel nowadays.
Yeah, very much so. And something that boomers fall for every time. Operation Fortitude encompasses a lot of different things, but they're basically divided into two things: Fortitude North and Fortitude South. So, being globe centric as I am and having that privilege, I'm going north first. So, the North was focused on spycraft disinformation. Okay, so while they're basically trying to keep Germans from fully committing to one defense strategy along their so-called Atlantic Wall, which stretched all the way along from the top of France, encompassing parts of Spain, Normandy, and the like. In order to do this, they needed to attack the Germans where they were most vulnerable, and that was their belief that they were super intelligent.
Yes.
Like, when you read about the sheer amount of German intelligence units, they all essentially started to cancel each other out because they were so thirsty for the Führer's attention that they would just give him anything they got. And on the other end of this, you have one particular point here that basically wins the Allies the war. And that is that the British managed to turn every single spy that Germany sent to them. I mean, they flipped them like pancakes. It was insane.
I will say
they had just no traction.
I think it's a continuous theme among fascists and or Nazis that they are very convinced of their own intelligence, and yet also they're represented by like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Donald Trump as paragons of intellect.
The times change.
Yeah.
The fashions might be different.
Sure.
The collars might be more festooned, but ultimately it all comes down to a bunch of people who are convinced they've got the real goods, and it's all.
And in terms of fashion,
missed.
I'm sorry, but I got to go with the 40s one who wore Hugo Boss over this modern like Dan Flash's shit that's going on today.
Well, but I bought a shirt from Dan Flash's that's $2,000. It's got to be great. Anyways, so the UK has two groups here. You got MI5, MI6, and they're both working a couple different angles here. So you have all of these double agents that they've flipped, and they're feeding these people all this information, specifically pointing the Germans to an invasion that's going to come at Pas de Calais. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it makes sense because that's like the shortest distance between Britain and the European shore, right? Mm-hmm. The land mass. So it makes sense in a lot of ways. So they use what they call the double cross system. They use their spies to feed information. That information is transmitted via these little pop-up trucks full of radio equipment to German high command. And all the while, because the British had broken the Enigma coding machine system, they could actually verify what the Germans believed and what if stuff started to fail, like they told a joke that didn't fly. They're like, all right, I know we need to workshop this. Like,
they're basically open micing it. Yeah.
Like, how we need a new punchline. We need, like, the angle works, but we need a new lander. And the guy that you always hear about in this sort of rigmarole is a Portuguese fellow, or actually he's from Spain. Named Juan Pujol Garcia, who was based in Portugal, which was a neutral country in this conflict. Mm-hmm. His nickname was Garbo. And he had a wonderful talent, which was to make up very believable lies. So according to him, in the German high command, he was running like 30 double agents within the British government and Allied command. None of these people were real. None of them. But the Germans were so convinced, like they gave him the Iron Cross. They're like, "You're great." Like, please keep paying me money, you dipshits. And so
well, and also, like, in addition to just being very stupid, so much of like German, like not just Hitler, but like the German high command and even most of the military were on so many amphetamines at this point.
Yeah.
You know, the war is a moving beast. It's you gotta keep up with it, baby.
I believe.
And sleep is the enemy, and also the British are the enemy, and the Americans now. Oh, we've really fucked
sometimes.
up. We haven't really won over France.
Occasionally, sleep is the ally, apparently, because I have read fairly reliable sources that on the day of the D-Day invasion, Hitler slept in and had strict orders not to be awakened under any circumstances. So their response was delayed because no one wanted to wake up Hitler and tell him that D-Day was happening.
Can you imagine trying to win a war and you're the highest person on your totem pole is like, today's the day I sleep in. Oh. And you lose the war.
One of my favorite
self-care is important.
One of my favorite things is readdressing Hitler, reappropriating him as not like this Hannibal Lecter-esque genius, but actually he's like a fascist Forrest Gump who just happened to fall into this high role.
So yeah, because they had all their fingers in the Germans' pie, like they
delicious.
I mean, listen, if you've been to Berlin, you know they know how to do meat.
They make a good pie.
They really do. And sausage. It's fucking unbelievable. I had the best burger of my life there. Anyways,
Hamburg. There's a reason that's got the name.
Listen, they do good stuff. Now, I want to make that very clear.
Yeah, present tense.
Now, I'm not boosting the Nazis' ability to make a hamburger.
Well, to be fair, when you had that burger, I imagine Hitler was not in power. Hey folks, just jumping in because a little bit of Patrick's audio came back pretty garbled and extremely difficult to listen to, only about 20 or 30 seconds. So I'm just going to summarize it for you. So what it comes down to at this point is they're trying to convince the Nazis that the attack will be huge in a way they can't handle. That's where we get into Fortitude South, which is around the southern UK and the English Channel. The Germans had spy planes in this area, so they were going to try and fool these spy planes into thinking the invasion was much larger than it actually was. And since the spy planes were basically just people looking over the edge of their planes, they could do this with pretty simple tactics like inflatable tanks, canvas landing craft, and styrofoam guns. And that is where the audio comes back, so we're taking you back to the show.
So one of the things that they really screwed with the Nazis is that they not only made these fake tanks and turrets and troop placements and all this stuff. That's all just blow up stuff.
Yeah.
And like
it's
cardboard.
like, you know how they often say that people like have a sexual fetish for weaponry? This is literally blow-up dolls of...
Yes,
Yeah.
of tanks.
Yeah.
They all got them from one weird dude's basement.
And on top of that, like the camper, the thing that really convinced them that the first U.S. Army group in Kent was like a real thing and that they just had an unbelievable force just ready to invade Pas-de-Calais was they put General Patton in charge of the force. And the Nazis just ate it up at this point. Like, how could, like, Patton's their big dog, right? So if they're putting him in charge, this is where the action is going to happen.
He's the main guy. He
Yes.
stands in front of big American flags.
Very much so.
Yeah, that's what.
He's played by George C. Scott. Like,
Right.
he's very commanding. If you watch The Changeling,
Meanwhile,
he's
who plays Eisenhower? J.K. Simmons.
These days?
Hey,
Yeah,
don't
I think he could
disrespect
pull off an
Simmons.
Eisenhower.
Yeah, actually,
Don't
yeah,
disrespect
no,
Simmons.
no, that's true. He could beat
That man
the
has
shit
an
out of
Oscar
me.
and he deserved it.
Yeah,
He's very
Stanley
very
Tucci.
scary.
I'm only thinking of bald actors now. That's the problem. This is not Mark Strong.
His J.
I
Jonah
think.
Jameson is the gold standard and forever will be.
Yes,
Yes.
100%. There is no other. So now this had while there were certain groups within the Germans who were like, I don't think this is gonna fly, and they were continuing to build up the Atlantic Wall. They managed to both convince the Germans and confuse them because they would attack shipping and rail routes to these other possible landing sites, and they would hear back like they're convinced, like they must be invading here. Why else would they try to cut off the railways in and out? Well, it had a twofold effect because not only did it convince the Nazis, but it froze those troops in place, all those supplies, all the armory, all the manpower. They couldn't get them elsewhere once the actual invasion happened on June 6th because they were stuck. They were frozen into place. They continued this with stuff like Codename Window, where the RAF would just drop pieces of aluminum that would just confuse radar screens. And you're like,
Okay,
that
I thought
sounds
just like on people's heads.
basically. Well, they didn't worry about people seeing it on the ground. They only worried about the radar because the Germans were convinced that radar could not be fooled. Again, stupid people will believe what is on a screen. Now, hold on. If it doesn't matter that it's not real, if they see it on the screen, they still believe it. This matters not now. We've grown past it in the age of the internet, but once upon a time, this was true. You also had Operation Taxable and Glimmer, and they would use like fake boats and chaff to kind of like keep all the troops to the north and south of Normandy Beach. And then they had Operation Titanic, which would just use like bombing runs that would give the impression that, okay, here come the troops and they're landing right here in Caen. No. They're landing in Pas de Calais. And the Germans just couldn't handle it. And now they have all of these German spy agencies who are all competing with one another to get the next scoop. And they're just feeding the high command with the dumbest information possible. And by hook or by crook, like, you know, it didn't make D-Day a cakewalk by any measure, but like that.
I don't think anyone landed and was like, wow,
this is a breeze.
This is refreshing.
Oh my God. It's a great day to golf here. I mean, I don't know why I packed all this stuff.
That's why commonly you'll see people say, you know, Sunday D-Day is the phrase that you have when you want to go out to brunch.
Right. Especially if you want it to be unsuccessful on the first day and then walk over a lot of dead bodies on day 2 to brunch. And
mimosas are a hallmark of D-Day.
But because they were spread so thin, what the Allies really did was, instead of having all front, force where they just just tried to throw everything they possibly could at each of the places that the Germans were, they pierced the balloon. They just popped through one area and then flooded it and sealed off the Germans with the seas to their backs. And it took a couple months, but before you knew it, like, because France really didn't enjoy their time under Hitler's rule, they had not a lot of trouble going through France and knocking on Germany's door quickly after. Like, but all of these machinations helped make that happen. It was not one thing, and certainly you cannot discount the men who landed on that beach that day. But in order for them not to be completely repelled, all these things had to work, and thank goodness they did.
Yeah. And also, definitely helped that the Nazis were drugged up idiots.
Right.
Almost to a man.
But drugged up idiots who almost, it almost worked. If they had, if they hadn't believed their own BS and they hadn't invaded Russia in winter,
I'm gonna say it, man. It'll be the only time I think in my life that I say this, but man, thanks, meth. You did your job this one time. You really came through.
Yeah, that's the slogan. Meth, maybe just once. Parentheses, if you're a Nazi.
But why can't?
If you're a Nazi, as much as possible.
We have plenty of meth in this country. Why can't we beat American Nazis with meth? You know they have it.
Sure.
But for some reason, it doesn't seem to decimate their ranks any, because they're not a unified force. They're a bunch of dorks running around in cosplay.
Hey, now.
Yeah. Well, you need.
I do suspect that if we tried to drip feed American Nazis false information, it would be surprisingly easy to make them fall for it.
Sure.
I think part of the problem is also, like, you need enough meth to handle, like, the meth Nazis, but then there are the Nazis who are like the Chardonnay Nazis.
Sure, yeah.
Sort of.
The Stephen Millers, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
exactly. And so you need, like, some sort of high class, I guess Coke. Well, maybe.
Or just
might be
alcohol, you know.
Yeah. Or enough bulletproof coffee or whatever. I don't know what these people drink. Morphine, yeah. Yeah, it's such like a fucking high school props department when you see the pictures of, like,
they're not
the
believable
styrofoam
enough
guns.
on the ground. That's absolutely for sure. But they didn't really have to worry about it. Like, all they had to do was make enough of an impression and really not give away the farm, because the clock was not on their side here. They couldn't dance about this forever. So they really had to move at a certain point. And, they were able to pull it off, Lord willing.
Patrick, thank you very much for your true account of Operation Fortitude. We're going to swivel over to Brian's alternate account now.
Yeah. So, through my research, I've found some things that sort of fill in the background of Operation Fortitude a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And namely, it starts because when like British military and British intelligence sort of formulated this plan, the thing they needed was someone to manufacture a bunch of like blow up tanks and like wood airplanes and fucking styrofoam machine guns.
Right. So you meet up with your local whoopee cushion guy and you go, can you scale up?
Oh, we'll get there. They also, they turned to some sort of, they were sort of like underground a little bit, but like well-known underground pranksters. These two brothers, Edmund and Spencer Barry.
Okay.
They were big on YouTube at the time.
They were
Sure.
impractical jokers, but the U.S. government came a-calling and said, will you be practical for us?
No, this being
That's a weird, that's like from the,
I assume it's ye old YouTube though.
yeah, it was actually, it was a cardboard tube that you just yelled into.
It was thou too.
Yeah. Thou tube. That also, like, I think you just pitched, like, the only viable Impractical Joker's Valentine card.
Quick, get on the phone to True TV. They're waiting for your call.
But, like, the Barry brothers, they sort of pioneered, like, they did, like, the first prank telegram. And, they came up with, like, they poured sugar.
Did it say Baba Booey, Baba Booey?
And it's sort of lost to time.
Fair enough.
Did it ask
It
if
probably
your
did say
icebox
Baba
is
Booey.
running? Is that what we're going
Yeah.
for?
They poured sugar in gas tanks,
And
which was hard because of rationing.
The response to is your icebox running is
No.
it's just ice in a box. I don't know what that.
It's not really mechanical. I mean, you put the ice on top and it essentially, circulates air. There's no running happening.
Also, it's hard if you just have to like lean in someone's window and say it and then run away because you don't know their phone number. But yeah, they to get like the contract to manufacture the equipment, they needed to just like it's just paperwork. They had to like officially incorporate. So they made a shell company called the let me make sure I can read this. The Albion Corporation for Manufactured Equipment, which popularly was known as Acme. And
Sure.
the two brothers eventually led like the two divisions because Spencer was in charge of the decoys. So a lot of the manufacturing of the tanks and the planes, things like that. Edmund led the lesser-known sabotage department, which was it was responsible for setting up like front businesses in Axis-controlled territories and supplying the Nazis with equipment that was designed to backfire, or
cigars, I imagine.
Yep.
Once you lit them,
gum
Face
that's a
salt,
little
in your
mousetrap.
I think was particularly popular there. Popular at parties, I'm told.
Yeah, like a punching bag on a spring that when you like unplugged it, it went backwards at you.
Sure.
Or just like birdseed filled with grape shot that when the British ate it, the Germans tried to use a magnet to catch them, but the magnet only attracted a bunch of TNT.
Sure.
Yeah.
Also, British soldiers eat birdseed, I guess. When you're just watching fucking YouTube compilations of Wile E. Coyote videos, you kind of start to lose the thread a little bit.
The label super genius gets thrown around a lot when it comes to Wile E. Coyote, and creativity wise, absolutely. On the practical side, he needed a project manager.
Yeah, no, he was very much like the name of whatever the guy is who founded WeWork. But he needed someone on the other side.
Sure, yeah.
He needed like an Elizabeth Holmes, sort of.
A deep-throated woman. Sure.
Speaking of, have you guys?
That's my favorite Carlos Santana song.
Have you guys ever read Under Commandant Coyote's testimony at Nuremberg? It's very interesting.
Listen, a lot of people put their lives on the lines to, forward these things. They climbed into fake cows and were, taken advantage of. Sometimes, you ended up enjoying such adventures, but ultimately, that's not what you got into Spycraft for. It was a fringe benefit at best.
I am picturing someone walking around two people, I guess, in a fake cow costume, just like humming "God Save the King." Yeah, and it worked. Like, their company was very successful, and they continued after the war. But the sabotage division sort of lost its guiding force when Edmund Berry died during an anvil experiment. He had rabies. But decoys under Spencer continued, and the war was over at that point, and so they needed to diversify. So it was less blow up tanks and more rubber vomit, fake poop, like you said, and so
y'all got fake poo.
Y'all got fake poo. Classic. So, and eventually they opened, of course, a chain of brick and mortars called Spencer's Gifts.
Sure.
And they did also stay with military contracting on the side while running.
Very different, unrelated. Based on their love of puns in their titles, how has Rick and Morty never made a brick and mortar reference in one of their episode titles?
I mean, because what story does that suggest? Where does that plot go?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure. Somebody opens a shop and it sells some fucking time travel sci-fi bullshit that they can do.
Yeah.
That sounds like Rick describing what's going on in the fucking
it's something
in whatever
you put on the whiteboard. You don't necessarily use it for that episode,
Sure.
but when it comes up, you aren't that bullet is in the
That
chamber.
one works.
Yeah.
And then fucking Dan Harmon makes you do the fucking story circle for it or whatever. Whatever his fucking thing is. I haven't watched Rick and Morty since season 1. I don't know. Is he still on it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, he's on it.
Okay. So Acme stayed with military contracting, like I said, and deception. And in 2002, they were contacted by Donald Rumsfeld, Paul Wolfowitz, and Dick Cheney about possibly putting some inflatable WMDs in Iraq.
This is a dark turn.
Yeah. And so they did take the contract, but Edmund Bear, who was still handling all this himself,
Yeah, still alive.
Wow.
Man.
still alive,
Yes.
was actually killed on the way over to Kuwait in his private jet when an anvil hit it. And that is the alternate history of Operation Fortitude.
It's really weird. We mentioned Eisenhower earlier, and he had warned America of the military-industrial inflatable complex. And
Yes.
we didn't listen. And we should
Well, at that
Yeah.
point, everyone was like, "Sure, Dwight, everything's okay."
I believe he even talked about how, even at the time in the 50s, we had sent an anvil into space, and we did not know when or where it would land. It's the uncertainty of the future and the greed and overreach of the weapons.
Our
industry.
destiny was in the stars, Zach. All right.
Uh-huh.
The only way to really explore it is via anvil. Okay. I think we've learned that in the past couple of weeks. You throw
Of course.
dead weight into space, and all of a sudden it becomes much more valuable.
Hey, some of the pictures from Apollo 11, you look at them, you can see the anvil
Yeah, sure.
if you zoom in. It's circling the Earth, waiting for its time.
That was actually, I think, what hit Sandra Bullock's ship in Gravity.
Oh yeah.
because it bounced off the plane back up into space. I mean, who could have
And
seen
then
that?
that's why she holds up the sign that just says "Yikes." Also, it's sort of ironic to me that people at the time, like at the end of Eisenhower's presidency, were treating him as the old man that Ronald Reagan was for most of his presidency. Just like a confused, senile old git, basically.
Right.
Ironic and sad. Because we didn't listen to one and then listened way too closely to another.
Sure.
But that is the alternate history of Operation Fortitude with our requisite Reagan bashing. So put it on the board.
Thank you very much, Brian. Yeah, we try and make sure every episode that you know that Reagan sucks shit. But thank you very much for your alternate history, Brian. Before we proceed to final judgments and the conclusion of the show, we're going to take a brief detour into Plugsland. And
which is also an adult toy store located at the corner and our sponsor for this evening.
If you want to blow up tank or a butt plug, Plugsland is where you want to go. Regardless, sorry for that weird off ramp onto Patrick. I think you have.
It says on the website,
podcast.
"Move hot air up there." I mean, as a marketing specialist, I'm okay with this.
Sure. Patrick, you have an excellent podcast called Kill by Kill. I myself was once a guest on this very show.
As a Friday the 13th expert, we kind of had it was mandatory that we have you.
I mean, I was a moderator on a Friday the 13th board in the early 2000s. So,
oh my God, he never shows up about it.
A qualification, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And also Dish by Dish, which as a fanable, I very much enjoy.
But you can get them both on the same feed.
Yes, on the same feed.
Yes.
But yeah, Patrick, would you like to briefly explain to our listeners what Kill by Kill is?
Sure. Kill by Kill is a horror podcast where we talk about the genre's least discussed component, and that is characters. Characters who are designed to be killed off along the way. And often, writers, performers, directors are trying to make them pop in some way, shape, or form. So their passing might be memorable. And sometimes those ideas work and sometimes they do not. But we judge them all in the order in which they pass off this earthly plane. And you can find us wherever we have podcasts. We also do a side podcast that's on the same feed on our off weeks, where we watch an episode of Hannibal. We call it Dish by Dish. And we just enjoy all the pretty people and the knuckleheads they eat and the fanciful way in which they decorate dead bodies.
I'm picturing like Brian Fuller in the writer's room being like, all right, who's the knucklehead we're eating this week?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's the perfect way to describe it because
Yeah.
Hannibal is the only show I've ever seen that makes violence into art in a very particular... Yeah,
it is one of my favorite television shows of all time.
It is both gory and gorgeous. I mean, there's nothing ever that's going to be quite like it on its scale and the unique way it foisted its way onto the National Broadcasting Company on Friday nights. It just like it should not exist, but I'm so very happy it does. And while we watch a fair amount of horror that we love, and then horror movies that we basically watch to make fun of them, watching Hannibal is truly a joy. It's a wonderful palate cleanser, even though what you're eating is human beings.
You're not going to watch every movie in the Friday the 13th Nightmare and Halloween series without a few pretty bad movies getting in the.
We're still holding off on Halloween. We cannot
that's
pull
right.
that
Yeah,
trigger.
You've only done Nightmare and Friday.
There's a lot of movies in that middle section that people truly love, and the last thing I want to do is just rip apart the things that they enjoy. And I can't imagine us having the same fun time that we did with Nightmare and Friday with that particular series. So.
I agree.
We moved on to Scream. We decided to get a little bit more modern with it.
I think Scream has a consistency of quality. Even the third one, which is lower, is not as low as most series get.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, not by a long shot.
But yeah, I agree. This is sort of a tangential thing, but I think Halloween at its worst is just so dull that it's almost impossible to. At least Friday and Nightmare at their worst are like so bad that it's fascinating in a certain way. Halloween is
so-
Like, once you're taking Manhattan, you're like,
Sure.
I'm along for this boat ride. That is
A boat
most of
ride
this
that
fucking
starts
movie.
in a lake and ends up on the shores of Manhattan, which borders the Atlantic
Precisely.
Ocean. Sure, why not? It's just one of those things where if we didn't watch them in the way we did, you kind of wouldn't notice all of the weirdness, because particularly with Friday, because it starts filming in 1979 and Manhattan is released in 1989. You're getting these weird slices of time of what fashion was, what people thought was important, what touchstones you needed to hit. And it is a weird view of that particular decade. And then Nightmare on top of it is one of those things where it's very fantastical. But a lot of those movies were just done so fast without a script during strikes. Just like we have a date, we got to push Freddy now, that they just go off the rails at a certain point. And even the really good ones have ludicrous, decisions that are being made. And it was a lot of fun to talk about, especially in a sort of stretched out way. Whereas something like Evil Speak, I would never want to break up into 3 or 4 episodes. I would rather jump off a bridge.
Yeah. Well, and Halloween, Season of the Witch notwithstanding, stays fairly, like, restrained, almost. At least, like, tonally.
I find 4 through kind of 4. 4's okay. 5 and 6, especially 5, I find just boring.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't like
It's
it.
so
And-
filmed in Utah. It's just, it just the Mormonism just leaks into the movies. And I know people who absolutely love them, and they should. I don't want to take away their joy, but I don't think I would find joy joking about them the same way I have even in Scream, which these movies, they're legitimately great, a lot of them. But they are talking about those characters is really interesting because people are trying to make those characters pop, give them points of view, and it's everything we still talk about, just in a really great movie. So it's a flip side of what we handled with Friday and Nightmare to varying degrees.
And then, of course, there's the Leprechaun series.
Sure. The number 4 in space,
Well-
which we have covered, in which a robot sergeant begins a drag show towards the end of it for no discernible reason, and it might be the most entertaining part.
What
that
if there
isn't-
was
You
a
will-
reason? Like, that
you
would be
will-
almost more bizarre to me.
The beautiful thing about Kill by Kill is you'll never run out of stuff. Even the most recent Fear Street series, which are blatant riffs on Friday and Scream, like, you'll never run out of things to talk about.
I certainly hope so. And we're 2 of the oldest people on the internet talking about it. So if there's any point of view that obviously there are many places you can go that can hear yourself talk back about these things. But if you have a Wikipedia or Google window open, you'll get a good half of our jokes. So please check us out.
And as evidenced by the fact that we went off on a long tangent about the show, I think it's a really fun show, and so give it a listen.
Thank you.
We're going to move over to Brian and myself. Brian, do you have anything coming up in particular? I know you've got that new baby life, so I doubt it.
Yeah, got that new baby, that pandemic stand-up life, which is still not a thing that's really safe or happening or worth it. I'm not gonna get a virus to go to a bar. I don't know why I started talking like a pirate. I'm sorry. So I'll just say that it's a charity I've plugged a couple times, but WeCycle, WEE cycle.org, which gets things like diapers and baby formula and things like that to families in need and families experiencing homelessness with small children. So if you can donate to them, either in cash or if you are able to in material, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I'll add that obviously every single episode we tend to do this. We deprioritize. We do have a Patreon.
Yes.
But if you have to choose between giving to our Patreon or giving to something like Amnesty International or something like that, where people it's been a difficult year, 18 months for a lot of people. So I would encourage you to rather give to the charity instead of us. But if you like this show, we welcome it as well.
And if you send me a note that says, I specifically did not donate to a charity to send you money, I'm going to be very weirded out.
Don't send a note. Write that on your 5-star written review of this podcast. Because that helps us move up the rankings, those 5-star written reviews. So, yeah. Say, I donated to a charity instead of this show and put a 5-star review on it. That's great. We love it.
Yeah. Yeah. But Zach, you co-host Movie Trap.
That's true. I co-host another podcast, called Movie Trap, in which me and my 2 co-hosts pick a theme. We pick 3 movies within that theme. Each of us picks one. And at the end, we vote on which is the best. So it might be, let our significant others pick the theme for this round. Or it might be something like movies you loved in high school, failed franchise starters. And then upcoming, our Halloween round, which we do every year, where we pick 3 horror movies in a specific set. It could be from a specific time zone. It could be sequels. It could be about ghosts or, specifically slashers, whatever. If you like this show, maybe listen to that.
I don't know, Zach. Talking about horror movies on a podcast, that doesn't track for me. But all right, the rest of it sounds great.
Hey, it's only once a year, unless somebody picks a horror movie at another time in the year.
Sure.
What was that fucking Jake Gyllenhaal identical twin movie?
We watched that.
Yeah, no.
It was called, I think, Enemy.
What was it? Yes. Yeah. Anyway. I think that brings us to Judgment, which...
yes, it does. That falls to me this week. Operation Fortitude, obviously an important moment in World War II. Lot of, counter-espionage and all the like to ensure that D-Day existed. But I also enjoyed, I have to admit, the obvious extension of the silliness to make it truly a Looney Tunes gimmick against the Nazis, and then extending beyond that, making it so that America failed to learn from what they learned in World War II and turned it into something harmful in the build-up to the Iraq War. It just seems so true to what America is all about.
Yeah, that's the fun.
I think I do have to go for I think I'm going to go for the alt this time, because I think the spirit of Operation Fortitude is brought bare in the Acme version of events.
If you do not learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it, and that's why we got a second Space Jam.
Exactly.
Oh man, I've seen so many clips of the cameos in that, and I am upset.
I threw it on our outdoor screen for my son and a couple of his cousins that were in town, because we have an outdoor movie screen. So it's very nice in these COVID times. That's reasonably safe way to watch movies. But they decided they would watch it, which I enjoyed because then I did not have to. And the silence that came from 3 tween boys watching that movie, just dead silence, was like, if you can't make these dorks laugh, what is the point of this motion picture? And the point is corporate synergy.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not like...
I'll give it 1 point. I'll bet Don Cheadle is better than anything in the first movie.
Well, again, you invite Don Cheadle to the party, like he's coming, with his lampshade attached. Like he is a professional. He's gonna make a meal of anything. That I don't doubt. He deserves all the flowers that come his way. But oh my god, it just slog.
Yeah. I'm not typically one to be mad about, like, oh, they're misappropriating this intellectual property that I care about. But I saw, like, the clip of, I think it was Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote in Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
And I just said out loud, what the fuck?
Well, there's no reference my 11-year-old loves more than Mad Max.
Yeah.
There's something that's the key to his funny bone. And
yeah.
To be fair, I did just vote for an alternate history that was all about Looney Tunes,
Yeah.
so maybe I am the perfect target audience for this movie.
Oh, Zach, don't. That's bad self-talk.
Hey, I could get a half a bottle of Jack Daniels down and throw this on and forget about it the next morning, but enjoy it at the time.
Jesus. Okay. I think that'll do it for the revisionist for this episode. Just the vision of Zach, I'm assuming, in his underwear drinking half a bottle of...
It's the only way for an adult to watch Space Jam 2.
open bathrobe, bear slippers, rather. Yeah, I can see this.
Patrick, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time.
Zach, thank you as always.
Of course.
For everyone here at the Revisionists, I'm Brian Flynn.
I am Zach Powers.
And have a good time.
No, go for it.
Do it.
No, it's weird.
No.
He's Patrick Hamilton.
There we go.
Brian, give it the end. Give the outro.
Oh, have a good time. August 7th, 768. Pope Stephen III is elected to office, and he lets the cardinals know that on Fridays they can call him Pope Steve. August 7th, 1978. President Carter declares a federal emergency due to toxic waste in Love Canal. Fortunately, sexual innuendo wasn't invented until 3 years later. August 7th, 1890. Murderer Anna Mansdaughter becomes the only woman ever executed in Sweden. She had to build the chair herself with pictures and an Allen wrench.
August 7th, 1782, George Washington orders the creation of the Badge of Military Merit to honor soldiers wounded in battle. It is later renamed the more poetic Purple Heart. I didn't research the reason for the name change, but the chance that it's weirdly racist is about 40%. August 7th, 1978. U.S. President Jimmy Carter declares a federal emergency at Love Canal due to toxic waste that had been disposed of negligently. A small earthquake was reported at LBJ's grave as he thought of all the absolutely vile toxic shock jokes he would have made if he were still president.